Okay, welcome everybody to the Sensible panel. Welcome to Revival 2019. Sensible Software, of course, you will know, one of the biggest video game companies of the 80s and into the 90s, responsible for classics such as Whizball, Sensible Soccer, Speedball 2, Gods, and of course Cannon Fodder, among many others.
I think you chucked a couple in there, right?
It's a bit of a Brucey bonus.
Brucey bonus. I'm Mike James. This is Scott Schreiber. We're from the Retro Gaming Roundup podcast. And of course, we're joined by the brains and brawn behind Sensible Software, Jon Hare and Stoo Cambridge.
Hello.
Hello. Don't clap too much, it goes to the heads. Okay, Jon, you started Sensible in with Chris Yates in '86, picked up Martin Galway along the way, around '88.
That's correct.
Stu, at what point did you come in?
I joined Sensible in 1991, was it?
Sounds about right.
Yeah, I was a big fan before that, by the way. I was a massive fan. So for me, joining was like a dream come true. You know, it's like a guitarist getting a job with Pink Floyd. It's like, wow. So yeah, amazing.
And how did you two meet, Jon? Do you want to talk about the start of the company and how you met everyone?
Oh, the company, yeah. I'll just say a word on Stoo. So Stoo's actually, I did all the art for our games up to 91. Stoo's the first other person to lay a pixel on our games, except for the front screen of Megalomania, which was done by a guy called Joe Walker. So Stoo was the only person I ever entrusted to do the art.
He said the cheque was in the post. I don't believe it.
So how do we set it up? So just going back to when me and Chris met. So we met at school. We were at school in Chelmsford together in Essex, and we didn't really become friends until the fifth year. The old what they call the fifth year. I don't know what they call it these days. But we were like the year where you do your exams for like your O levels, not GCSEs. and we met on a train. We'd both gone to see Rush, if anyone knows Rush, good band. And I went with a mate of mine, he went with a mate of his. We didn't know each other at this point. And then on the train back, our two friends we were with knew each other and started talking, and I started talking to Chris, because we were all at the same school, the four of us. And that's actually how I met Chris, and then we became friends. We were in the same maths class then, and we set a band up together. So we started off as a band. So the first 3-4 years we never touched games, just Chris was dabbling in computers. And then we both told our fathers, we're going to jack in college, get a van, we'll be in a band, it'll be alright, Dad. It wasn't alright. So we needed some alternative sorts of work. So actually I was working a bit in the warehouse in Asda at the time, like getting some proper money. And Chris, I went to Chris's house to write some music with him, because we were recording music all the time. And Chris had started to teach himself to program more by getting a Spectrum from Case Catalogue. You can give back after a month, the old deal. I did this 3 times, and got a demo of Snoopy flying around on his kennel around a ZX81 Spectrums were too modern for us in those days. And he got a job off the back of his Snoopy demo with a local company, and then I helped him out with some art one day he was struggling with, and then I got a job, and that's how we started. So for a year, about 9 months, we were working as like people just getting little contracts from this company, and then we realised they were taking. We did a game called Twister. Does anyone know Twister on the Spectrum? So we found out somehow that actually they were taking the money and paying me and Chris our money, and we found out that they actually retained 85% of the money and paid us 15%, and we did all of it. And we were like, this isn't happening again. So we, after the game, planned to leave and then set our own company up on the old government enterprise scheme, if anyone remembers those. One of the few things I can definitely thank Mrs. Thatcher for in our case. So basically you got 40 quid a week, which when we were 19 living at home was great. The condition was you needed a grand in the bank each, which we didn't have. So we got a grand in the bank each by continuing to work on another game for this company whilst we signed on for exactly 13 weeks, because you also needed to have signed on for 13 weeks to qualify. I don't know quite how they worked out. You needed to have been unemployed for 13 weeks and have a grand in the bank. We worked out a solution. So after exactly 13 weeks, we signed off. Got a bank account and set up Sensible Software. That's really a true story. That's how it started. And then shortly afterwards, we got Parallax sold to Ocean, and that was the start of the journey.
Yeah, so you did games like Parallax, Galaxy Birds in the early days, and then came a little something called Whizball, and So you were obviously working on that, John, and Stu, I presume you were playing it, and that's what made you a fan.
Yeah, I mean, I actually, there's a story I've told before where I actually spent a whole weekend playing whizball, and I told my mum not to go in my room in case she like pulled the plug out while she was vacuuming or cleaning or something. And yeah, I actually completed whizball in a weekend. I was really pleased with it. But I was a big fan, big fan. You know, like everybody used to play these games. And it was just amazing to see what you could do out of a Commodore 64. So for me, it's just great. Yeah, whizball's cool.
Speaking of which, do you want to talk about the development of the game and some of the technical wizardry behind it? Yeah?
So I mean, Whizball was an interesting one. So we've done Parallax, which was our first game, which Parallax didn't really sell particularly well, but it got us noticed in like Zap and the big magazines at the time. So we got a little bit of a reputation, and we hadn't worked out at that stage that Ocean were really good at shafting you in royalty statements because we hadn't had them too long. So they always had one number, very economical with ink. It was always at 0 at the bottom every bloody month. So we signed our next game with Ocean, which was Whizball. And of course we'd started working with Martin Galway by then. Martin, with his brilliant music he did on Parallax and Whizball, particularly on Parallax, Martin was really groundbreaking. So we knew we had a good team, and me and Chris we'd always written music together so we could work together very, very well. And we'd started to learn this new medium of games. When we started with Whizball, and we literally did, by the way, if you want to picture where we are in the spare bedroom in his dad's house with Flintstones wallpaper on the walls. It's not very big, we could fit 2 of us in there. And that's where Whizball started, and that's how it really worked, you know. And at that point, personally, I just moved away from my parents' home and living in a little bedsit in Ilford, which isn't particularly glamorous, by the way, part of London where I originally come from, and driving to Chris's house sometimes. And I remember actually in Whizball being really lazy and feeling really guilty that I was lazy because Chris was doing lots of work. And I went to his house one day and he had bought this circle. He said, look what I did yesterday. And he got this circle bouncing around, and then you turn the joystick left or right, and then the circle gathers spin, and then when it hits the floor it goes off on that spin. And that's how it started. It's really the start. That was all there was. This is ball bouncing. And so the first thing I did was drew this stupid P face on it to make Whizball, to make what we know now as a character Whizball. So then we had this face spinning around and doing this stuff. And then really the game's ideas just came from that. So Chris was a massive arcade fan at the time, playing all sorts of different shoot-em-ups and stuff at the time. And games like Nemesis and that kind of thing were big in the arcades then. Because you've got to remember, as most of us here do remember, but there wasn't a lot of home computer games even in those days. You know, we played games, grew up playing in the arcades, in the chip shop, because you couldn't even get in the pub when you were too young, you know. So
You could sometimes.
you could sometimes, if you're lucky, yeah. So we started to add the bolting on weapons and bullets, and then we added the little satellite going around. And then we had this meow, meow, meow when it was firing, and we called it a catalyte. So this was the catalyte idea came from, just from something like this. And then the ability to stabilise it so it didn't bounce around and you could fly it, fire. And then I had this idea from my college. So I studied, in college, I studied theatre design. It's called theatre design. So you do some building stage sets, doing makeup and costume, doing lighting, and all the things around the back, you know, the backside of what a theatre is. And I was really interested by the lighting and the fact that in paint, when you mix red, yellow and blue, you get certain colours, but in lighting, when you mix these colours, you get different results. So you get the kind of the RGB thing, the cyan, magenta and that. So the idea was to use this colouring to colour in the landscape, to start it off black and white, and then added colours, which came from this idea, collecting RGB basically and mixing them together. So then we got the cat to collect the drops, so that things gave droplets. And it kind of spirals from there, you know. You have one idea, leads to the next idea, leads to the next idea, leads to the next idea. The stupid police ships flying in, and you know, just jokes. You know, me and Chris had a very similar sense of humour. So I mean, you remember this? It was like half the time it was just jokes, right, in the office.
I mean, and people said to me, you know, over the years, what was it like working at Sensible Soccer? And I said, it was a dream come true because every day was great. You know, I mean, the hours were long. Don't get me wrong, but it was just we always laughed at the joke, didn't we? Always had a good time.
It was just you're working till 3 in the morning and you're taking the piss out of each other all night. Or, you know, when we were, for example, naming the teams in the custom teams in Sensible Soccer, that was just like, okay, I've got 50, my job, I've got 50 teams to do. Essex Girls, that's a good name. Anyone got any ideas? And Stoo goes Sharon, and someone else goes Tracy, and someone else. This is how we did it, you know, it was just, Like having a fun, wasn't it?
Yeah, it's just a load of mates having a laugh. That's what it is, really. And I think that is, you couldn't, I can't put my finger on exactly what it was, but we all got on. And that's the important thing, we all got on as friends, and we all just got the job done. But that journey that took us from the start of the project to the end, if we hadn't got on, the games would have been as good as they were. And I think that's the gist of it, really, isn't it?
I think it's people getting on. I also think, from a bit of a company structure point of view, talking about Sensible Software now, so don't go too off piece with your script there, but people often talk about how the modern games industry is like the old industry because it's a land of opportunity again with touch phones and that. This is actually not true. So the main difference was we could go to an Ocean or a Palace or a Virgin or whoever. We've worked with many publishers over the years and quite easily get an advance to pay us whilst we're developing the game. So we would generally do a demo for Canon Photo's Face maybe 2 or 3 months, and then shop it around a few publishers and see who makes us the best offer. And then if they say 50 grand, 100 grand, or whatever the price was, against a certain royalty, we knew we had that money coming in for the duration of the project. So what that then enabled us to do as a company, from a structure point of view, when me and Chris decided to take on more people. So when we took Stoo on, he was like not quite, Chris Chapman was the first, but he was like the second batch. Him and Jules, who was the lead programmer in Canon Fodder, they kind of came together. And we'd set up a structure where we just said to Stoo, I mean, in your case, it was like 15%.
Something like that.
Yeah, of the money that came from the games you worked on. And you do all the art, and that's the deal. If we spend 12 months doing it, you're going to get 15%. If we spend 5 years doing it, you're also going to get 15%. Your advance is set at 20 grand or whatever it was, and that was it.
Yeah.
And so what that meant was, all of our guys like Stoo were in to make money out of it like we were. Which meant that when we said we've got to work till whenever it is, it might be 1 in the morning, it might be 7, and it was some nights, people just did it. Because when you want people to be in it with you, you've got to also reward people in the same way. And that was really, I suppose, the culture, wasn't it?
Yeah, and we all believed in what we were doing, and we all wanted to make money from what we did. The hours are long. I mean, don't get me wrong, we laugh and joke, but it was long slogs at the end. I mean, we really worked our backsides off. But the rewards are there, and that's the key. Going back to today, I don't think a lot of people have that reward when they work so hard. We knew that we had to get these projects finished because we knew what we had invested in it, our time, and the money would be coming back on us if the games did well.
Often when I talk to people about Retro Days, no one asks about this stuff, but actually that culture of business underlying all the creativity is really important, because you build a platform that everyone can put their creativity in. So my job, for example, with Stoo, I'm a bit nervous someone else is doing the art at all. Who is this guy? Is he any good? Then you find out he's good, but maybe I just need to discipline him here a little bit.
Can you say that?
So what I did, like, in my paranoid state with Canon Fodder, which was the first one, I drew all the maps out, if you remember, on graph paper, and said, right, this guy's going to stand exactly there, and this weapon's going to be exactly here. But once I got to learn how Stoo was, and he was good, you could just trust people to do the job. So as a creative director, if you like, you give people freedom within a remit. So the remit is whatever, we need so many weapons, so many guys. And once we got the style established, that I think we were good at, myself and Chris, from a programming side as well. We were good at giving people freedom within a remit. So you keep some control on the overall vision. And if you want to see the difference, with Canon Fodder 2, I didn't use that control. And you can see that it slightly slips. Like, you're giving people too much freedom. So you give too much freedom and people start to run off on their own. So finding that balance of giving
I agree.
Giving artists expression room, but not too much, so that it doesn't fall out the thing is the difference.
Yeah, I agree with that. I mean, as an artist, ultimately you're working for somebody, and Jon's vision for what he wants, he's got to be able to translate what's in his head to me, so I can put it on screen or paper. But he's also got to understand that I've got my own little bits of creativity that I want to put into it, and it's finding that kind of mix that works, and that balance was so important at Sensible, because I would go off and I would do stuff, and most of the time it's like, yeah, it's cool, But there's one. I mean, there's in Canon Fodder, the original water in Canon Fodder was actually like a murky greeny colour, because in my head I thought, well, it's swamp, dirty, this, vegetation, and you come over and you said, no, it's got to be blue, and I was like, goodness sake, blue, because there's only 16 colours.
So where did I get a blue from? So I had to remap stuff, but that was the right decision to make because we look at it and it added balance to the artwork. Because in Jon's head, he knew what he wanted. You know?
So Jon, Stoo, both of you, I'm curious on, you talked about the business model, you talked about the financial incentives, your hours and all. So for those of us, everybody out here, us sitting over here, that were on the receiving end, we're the ones that went and bought this thing and held this package in our hands and all. Can you walk us through the non-monetary rewards for each of you? What was it like the first time you opened up like a magazine from Germany and saw Whizball, or you saw a picture of an American store with there is cannon fodder?
It was pretty amazing. I mean, I remember that I was just chatting to someone outside a second ago. The first time I walked into Boots and saw a cassette with one of our games in it was the first thing. I think that would have been Twister actually in this case because it was the first full game we'd done, which wasn't properly Sensible Software. Although there is a cheat key where you can get the Sensible Software logo to come up. By the way. But yeah, the rewards was interesting. If you want to, in a nutshell, Sensible Software ran from 1986 to 1999. So if I take the period 86 to about 88, so Parallax, Whizball, whatever, their games were good, but they didn't get to number one. Our first number one game was actually Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit, believe it or not, which of course wasn't really a game. But then, so we then had that period where we were getting some creative kudos from magazines and stuff, but we weren't really getting the hits. Then we started to get the hits, like with Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit, Micropro Soccer, these kind of things. 3D Tennis, not so much. Megalomania, big hit. Unfortunately, Mr. Maxwell fell off his boat 2 months after it was released, so we didn't get our, we would have had a £75,000 royalty check that we didn't get because Mirror Group collapsed, if you remember, not just our royalties went, everyone's pensions went, so we're like right down the pecking order after the bank at the top and everyone else, But we lost 75% of our turnover that year, it was at 91. And we very, very, very nearly disappeared. And luckily we had 2 floppy disks to take to our bank manager to say, look, we haven't got any money, we need to borrow a bit to keep it going. This is when these guys were just on board, so we'd just taken on Stoo.
I remember it.
Jules and we said, we think these games are going to be these games are going to give us some money. And the bank manager saw this little floppy disk, and he went, that floppy disk is worth 25p. That floppy disk is worth 25p, so you're showing me 50p's worth of value, so why should I lend you any money? I can't remember what happened, if we did or did not need that overdraft, but in the end, that floppy disk was cannon fodder, that floppy disk was Sensible Soccer. So fuck you, bank manager. so that's what actually happened. We really nearly went down and then it came back up again. And but to go back to your question, until at the time, just before Sensible Soccer had come out, we'd had now 6 years with quite a lot of hit games, but not really a lot of money. I mean, enough to survive, but nothing to shout about. So you go through different stages. First, it was nice to be acknowledged. So when I see a lot of indies starting out and everyone says these indies can do stuff and they're chasing stuff, most of the time they're chasing that acknowledgement. I've joined the party. I'm not a nobody, That's what 90% of the industry chases these days. Just that. And then the next thing is having a hit game. Like, actually I'm good. Actually I'm good now, I've had some hits. But then you go, hang on, I'm really good, but I haven't really made much money out of it, And then when Sensible Soccer came in, that's when the money started to come in. But luckily for us, we'd set the structure up in the company from the start that the royalty systems, everything were in place, that it just dropped in, so you prepare it, so that when that's going to happen. And the big lesson for us was Megalomania, because that really did nearly make our company, not just our company, you had the Bitmap Brothers, you had Probe, and a whole bunch of other really top British developers signed with Microsoft. And the whole British industry nearly fell off a cliff, not just us. But luckily, we argued to get our rights back and won. All of us collectively won. And then we could resell our stuff. So it's an interesting story, actually, the collapse of Microsoft, because they were set up to be, at that stage with Microsoft, we'd signed Megalomania 2, which never came out in the end, Cannon Fodder, and Sensible Soccer were all signed to Microsoft, as well as Megalomania before it fell apart. So it was, yeah.
So you mentioned a couple of titles there I want to ask you about. Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit, Megalomania. Much more serious titles, if you like, than something like Whizball. Were they as much fun to work on? Were they a challenge?
I love working on all the games. I mean, when you make games, I'm sure a lot of you guys have made your own things, games or books or music or whatever. Every new project is your own baby, right? I was talking to Steve about what he's doing. He's got his own babies he's doing at the moment with books and stuff. That's how you work as a creative person. You love your current thing that you're doing. So yeah, shoot 'em up construction kit, I love doing. It started off, shoot 'em up construction kit. Chris and I had this plan that if he made this thing that I could make loads of games really fast, we could make more money because we'd have more games pumping out. We kind of realised pretty quickly the level of games we were getting out of it weren't as good as Whizball, say. But the tool he'd made me was amazing. So we actually reversed it to selling the tool and using my games as kind of like examples of what you could do with this tool, which is what it ended up being. And I'm glad we made that decision. Megalomania was fantastic. I mean, Megalomania was actually the first game we made for the Amiga. So International 3D Tennis was our crossover game from Commodore 64 to Amiga, 8-bit to 16-bit if you like. But Megalomania was like, oh my god, look at these graphics. We're not stuck with 16 colours anymore. It was like amazing. It was, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was great. I mean, I joined when Megalomania was being finished. So I was in awe because I was in a proper game developer's studio and I was there for an interview and I saw Megalomania running for the first time and I was blown away by what I was seeing. And I thought, wow, this is incredible, because I'd only had an Amiga for 6 months or something before that. But you look at the transition from 8 to 16-bit, and it was such a dramatic leap forward, in technology and visuals and sound. But as a creative person, your brain just goes into overdrive because you think, what can I do first? Like what Jon was saying about, this is your baby, you want to do this with it. When you're on that machine, the Amiga was just superb for feeding that drive to be creative, because it had everything you wanted as a game developer.
It was. If you look at Megalomania, actually, it changed radically in development. So at the very start of Megalomania, you had a spaceship, you were flying around, and you had to land on some planets, mine them, and then do the stuff you do in Megalomania, so mining, getting minerals, design new weapons, bolt them onto your spaceship, go and fly around, and then shoot everyone else in space whilst you're simultaneously micromanaging 16 different sectors. And the problem with the initial design was you physically could not do it. You could not fly a spaceship around and do this management game in real time. It just wouldn't work. So that's how it started.
And
so
the speech as well.
And added the speech as well, and the music. The speech doesn't affect the ability to play, But when, just 6 months before the game was due to come out, we saw, it was either Populous or Powermonger cover art, and it had a caveman on it. Which one is that? Is that Powermonger or Populous? Does anyone know? Powermonger, right. So we'd have seen the Powermonger art, and I went, caveman, So we've got this technology thing where we start in 10,000 AD and you get a better and better and better spaceship. What about if we start in 10,000 BC and you start with caveman, and you go forward through history, you actually know, rather than this made up history. And so we just transitioned it, so all that had to change was my art. Everything else stayed the same, actually. Got rid of the flying the spaceship around, but kept the combat and everything in the same way, and that was the history of it. And I love Megalomania. I would say of all the sensible games, it's the one that didn't have the chance it should have had because of Microsoft collapsing at the wrong time. We were 2 months into the release, it was #1, and the company collapsed. The royalties went, the momentum went with the game as well, though. That could have been, when you think what other games were coming out at the time, that could have done really well. And it's frustrating for me that in the States, games like Megalomania, for example, which were now as tyrants in the States, never really took off.
Yeah, it was a weird vibe because I would go over on vacation to Germany to visit family and such, and there were these, especially the Amiga, which made in America, was blowing up on the shelves in Germany, and there were all these wonderful games that we barely had. I wanted to just go back a little bit where you were talking about your creative mind and all that stimulated by the leap, from the 8 to 16-bit machines and all that. The machines of that era, were relatively closed architecture. I mean, if you bought a C64, typically wasn't going to have more RAM than that installed, whatever. And that era of the fixed architecture machines, I always felt, and we would discuss this a lot, it sort of drove creativity because you have to find tricks, you have to find the extras, you have to find the ways to do things. And you look at, the end of lifespan sort of games for, C64, they look darn near like Amiga 500 stuff, And how do you feel like, was that the closed architecture, the limitations of the system, How much did that drive your creativity? How much did you think going to these new endless expandable systems harmed your creativity in that regard?
I think that the restrictions that were placed on a developer, certainly with something like the 664, just helped, because you have a situation where you've got a finite amount of colour, a finite amount of memory, and it's like, well, what do I do? How do I get these sprites in here? Because I've only got enough memory for, say, 3 or 4 animations per character or sprite. The colours, so you look at ways to enhance what's on there, and you just try things out. Certainly from my era as the Amiga, I mean, I did dabble on the 64, I did some sprites, I did a little bit of programming, but the Amiga is where I really got into it. But even with the Amiga, I mean, Amiga was a fantastic machine, but it still had limitations. I mean, we had to use 16 colour mode because the machine, you put it to 32 colour mode and it slowed down. So, and then you go back to what John said about having a bit of a business brain behind it. You've got to think, well, we've got to convert that game to the ST and other formats. So if we've got a 32 colour set of graphics, we've got to convert it to 16 colours. So even with them 16 colours, you're looking at how do you get the best out of that palette of colour that you've got. And again, it's a restriction. So you think, well, I've got a spaceship and I need to have, 3 greys, and I need a thruster. So that's another couple of colours, and that's 5 colours gone. I've got, we need some planets. Okay, I've got another 4 colours for that. And all of a sudden, you've got this piece of paper in front of you, and this is how I work. I would just write down, I need so many colours for that, so many colours, and you think, damn, I've run out of colours. And then somebody like John will come and say, oh yeah, we need so-and-so. It's like, oh, right, paper in the bin, start again. But the skill is working around those restrictions, and I think that is the key with what we did back then and what developers are doing now, because there are no restrictions now, and you can pretty much do what you like, and that's great. But even when I don't do a lot of video game work these days, but I have done the odd project. And even when I am asked to work on something, I still set my own restrictions. I'll say, well, I'll allocate a set number of colours for that sprite that is going to have that many colours, because you're still trying to create something that is identifiable as yours. So yeah, it's good. I think it's good to have restrictions, but not to the point where you can't. You like that.
Actually, there's some massive things on this question. It's a very good question. So when you look at the old fixed architecture machines, and you've got a programmer who's a skilled programmer, but it's effectively like getting a musician and telling them to learn a new instrument. Like, they're going to take time. They can use their musical skill, but they're going to go from a piano to a guitar to a flute or whatever. It can take time. Some people can transition that. Yeah. So the first game they do on a new machine, they're learning it. You're not going to get the best out of that machine. And if I look at working with Chris Yates, who was a bit of a genius programmer, so once he got to his fourth game of the Commodore 64, he's becoming like a Jimi Hendrix of the Commodore 64, if you want. That's why we did international 3D tennis. He wanted to prove he could make 3D work on a Commodore 64. This is like high-level programmer stuff. Just because Microprose Soccer, we did these dual sprites, and we got all these different effects and rewinds and pushing that boat out. And the advantage of the fixed architecture machine, having a lifespan of about 4 years or whatever it was, is that a really, really good programmer could get up his skills and be a master of that machine, like you'd be the master of an instrument. The second thing, and the biggest difference with those, as a designer, I'm talking about as a game designer now. So when we were making any of the games on the Commodore 64 or on the Amiga, especially for the Amiga for me, because in the Commodore 64 I did all the art, and me and Chris co-designed, but on the Amiga, the programming work went up. So Chris focused mostly on the programming side, and not just doing programming his own games, but assisting the other programmers in some lower level stuff. And I focused more on the design stuff and doing some of the art, but then like Stoo came to do some of the other art or whatever. But I would say 75% of the programmer's effort was spent making a great game. From a design perspective, that means you're controlling the product all the time, you're creatively directing it, and all the work is going around making the best possible game. If you look at Sensible Soccer or SWOS, as opposed to Sensible Soccer 98, you can really see the flip. So when we did Sensible Soccer 98, 75% of the programmer's time was spent just drawing the graphics on the screen. Okay? So as a designer, there's not a lot you can do. it's boring, you know, just make it look like it appears and isn't fucked up. It's my request, please. You know? And that went on for 2 or 3 years. You remember this stuff?
There's a joke in the office because Chris Chapman, who wrote Sensible Soccer, he would use post-it notes on his monitor, and he would basically look at the raster draw line that would go down the screen, and he'd draw a little line where it would be, where it should be, and he'd, you know, adjust his code. And I was working on the other side of the office. I was doing like cannon fodder and stuff. And John would often go over to Chris and he'd say, right, and Chris, not now, the bonnet's up. And that was his phrase, the bonnet's up, you know.
Bonnet's up.
You know, because he's got some really heavy code he's doing to get as much as he can out the machine, you know, because he had to get these base routines working. So we get lots of sprites going around, it's scrolling smooth. And that was before you could get him on board and actually do some proper design on it.
That's correct,
you know?
yeah.
So there's a lot of work, like you say, a lot of work went on before you got to the point of actually having a playable game.
It's really, you know, if you look at our transition to the 3D games, to Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, Sensible Soccer 98 and Have a Nice Day, which you worked on, wouldn't you? So, in all 3 games cases, the technology, the programming was the problem. You remember that time. I mean, the art was really good on all of the games. Not on Sensible Soccer 98, it was dire, but on Have a Nice Day and Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, the art for its time was good. The design was really good. But the programming was hopelessly behind because all the programmers are learning these new systems. How do we control 3D? Oh, we need animation. Oh, the animation's different. Well, we want a really fast-playing football game, and we're trying to learn how to do these motion-captured models and get rid of all the shit in the data that used to come with it in the old days because it wasn't cleaned up. And all the time is spent on this stuff. You know, so if you look at Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, we had a... he's got even more experience than him. But we had a not very... someone who over-exaggerated his ability as a programmer, shall we say. And we are basically sticking 10 artists through this fucking terrible, not working engine. So you can't demo the game to people. And it's because of, in that, from 2D to 3D, that's when the learning experience for programming went through the roof. And you couldn't develop games at the same pace. All the rest of us designers and artists and people, we're going, okay, ready to do the next bit, and they're going, oh, not quite, we're not quite ready. And then eventually after a year, oh, we're ready, and then we do it, and it's, oh, no, it looks shit anyway. You know? And that was what it was like. And so it was very, very, very frustrating. So yeah, the fixed architecture was wonderful. And actually, what's great now, developing now, because I'm still developing now with Sociable Soccer and stuff, is Unity. I love Unity, Unreal, doesn't matter which one it is, because they just get rid of this problem we used to have. And that's been wonderful from a design perspective, that programmers haven't got an excuse to say, come back to me in a year, because the bonnet's really super up.
The bonnet's blown off.
So I have just one quick follow-on to a comment you made there. You were talking about the reuse of assets. Okay, now we have this graphical set drawn. We reuse. Was there any particular system, if there isn't, fine, but was there a particular system that, because of the numbers of units sold, that you wanted to port to that system, but it really screwed up all your plans? Or complicated them?
I've got a soft spot for the Atari Jaguar, right? And I know that didn't say so it wasn't that. I don't know. I mean, I wish we'd done more console stuff. I wish we'd done more Mega Drive stuff, and I wish we'd have done more Super Nintendo stuff. But you got to look at the economics. You know, it's all about the money at the end of the day.
It's not just that; it's also about the focus. So we made a decision in this 16-bit era to do all the 68,000 stuff internally. So Amiga, Atari ST, and Mega Drive. We do internally.
Did we do Cannon Fodder Mega Drive?
We did Cannon Fodder Mega Drive, yeah, and we did Sensible Soccer Mega Drive internally. And actually, Chris did SNES Sensible Soccer internally. But the PC we always, for example, put outside. And we made a decision with a number of ports to put them outside because we could either, for example, choose to focus on the port of Sensible Soccer to some obscure console or work on Cannon Fodder. You know, what would you rather do? You've only got so many people. So it's choosing where you put the time and the focus of the team. And actually, when we found in some periods where we've tried to focus on too many games at once, you always come a cropper. So, yeah.
So you did. You mentioned a couple of early sports games, 3D tennis and micro soccer. We'll come back to sports games in a second. I'm sure you'll know. But then you did WizKid.
Yeah.
A little bit cheeky.
Yeah.
Your sense of humour starting to come through, and you did other games in a similar vein. Not all of them made it out. But do you want to talk about WizKid and some of its inherent cheekiness?
Yeah. WizKid, another game I love. So, your question about safe games or not safe games. I think at Sensible we kind of like dovetailed out there games like WizKid or Whizball or Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll with pretty safe games like Shoot 'em Up Construction Kit. Sensible Soccer is actually a pretty safe game. It's just a football game. It's not creatively very.
Sensible Train Spotting.
Sensible Train Spotting was good. Although that was more of a bit of fun, wasn't it? But WizKid particularly was the last expression really of me and Chris Yates working together. So, we'd been a double act for many years in music and games. And WizKid was the last time where we signed it with Ocean, with Gary Bracey, who a few of us saw recently in Warsaw. And we basically totally played that game like avant-garde jazz. It was amazing. It's like every day we'd make stuff up, just throw it in. So the idea was, once you got this solid, it started off like an Arkanoid style game, kind of move, but like moving bricks around to remove bricks. And then we added the ability to run around a level and do a simple like adventure, running around platforms. Once we had those pieces in place, and this idea of picking up objects and using them, we could do anything we wanted. Every level could be anything. And the dog level was a good example because it was a photo of your cousin, was it?
It was actually my friend. It was his aunt. He didn't know what we'd done with the picture, and I still think it's a bit of a sore point today with him. So yeah, and you said, "Oh, that'll do." And I don't know.
We just wanted a woman's face, right, to turn into dog girl, and he had this picture.
My friend had got a scanner, and he scanned a load of stuff, and I just happened to have the disc with all the scans that we'd had because I've been staying at his house the weekend. And you saw this image, you thought, that'll do, I'll have that. Okay, and I was like kind of fairly new to the company, so yeah, okay, no problem.
And then we gave her these sharp dog teeth, and then we played How Much Is That Doggy in the window in the background.
And went downhill from there.
And when it gets to the point where she goes, woof, woof, basically her mouth opens, and you've got to jump inside her mouth to get to the next part of the adventure. And that is pretty much a good demonstration of how our company works. So another example of WizKid, why I love WizKid. So, but this time Martin's left because he's gone to join Origin in America, and we've got Richard Joseph doing our music, so another brilliant composer. So Richard's music featured really pretty heavily in WizKid. A lot of the levels, you remember the music before you remember the level. And we had this level, the first level. So to give you, has anyone played WizKid in the audience? Yeah. I see. Okay, right. So you're running around the level. You finish the bricks. You're this head, this little whizball, like baby. Because WizKid was based on my eldest daughter, who was about 3 at the time. So a little green WizKid in these blue dungarees with stars on them, like a wizard kind of would have. And we concocted this terrible story that Whizball was actually a girl and the wizard was actually a man, and this was the child. So, and what happened was that the wizard had gone missing, and Whizball wanted, Whizball or the wizard had gone missing. You had to discover, you had to find your mother, stroke father, basically. So that was the whole story, and you started off. You started off in this level, and then you rung a bell that was at the side, and an outside toilet dropped down from the sky and landed on the floor. Then you open the toilet, and a dog barks at you. Then you're meant to go back, play again, buy a newspaper from the shop, stick it in the door, and then when you open the toilet door next time, the dog's reading the newspaper in the toilet, so you can go past him. And then you find a donkey. Now, if you've got a carrot and a stick, which you also got from the shop, you jump on the donkey's back, you run along, he throws you off his back, you land in some water. And if you've got some oxy gum on you, which you got from the condom machine in the downstairs toilets that you got to by jumping down the well, going down in the bucket, and then the bucket breaks, and the only way to get up is to piss in one of the urinals that's broken, and then it floods the toilet, and then you go back up again. And that is how the game worked. It was like every level was the same, just bullshit story. It turned into a game that actually, it didn't sell at all at the time. All Ocean's game sold 0 copies, and they're all to stay going back to the same story. But over history, people remember the game much better now than they used to. It's become a classic kind of like avant-garde to the side game. So yeah, I've got a lot of love for WizKid.
So then you came back and went a bit more serious with Sensible Soccer and of course Cannon Fodder, and those two kind of games, and Megalomania in some way, you know, looking at it, it's a sensible game. The little graphics, the small players, the small soldiers or whatever. Was that technical restrictions that they were so small? Was it an art decision?
Another great story. This. So if you think about what I decided about Megalomania, so we started off with spaceships. Then we see this Powermonger advert, and we decided to make them into little men, a caveman, right? So then we've made this little caveman. So the chronology of the way the games are developed isn't necessarily always the same as what you see when it's released. So I think in the office, when Megalomania is being finished, we did Sensible Soccer next. I think maybe Cannon Fodder had just started at that point because you guys had started working.
Yeah.
And WizKid was also being developed in the background. So they're all happening at the same time. But the way the Little Men came from was, at the end of Megalomania, me and Chris Chapman were working extremely late nights. If anyone remembers the loader music or the main menu music for Megalomania, it's kind of this spooky kind of thing. And I remember hearing it on about 5 machines at once when we were testing, all phasing in and out of each other within our time, which is quite crazy. And we were playing a lot of Kick-Off 2 actually at that time, to kill our time whilst we were waiting for builds to be made, which took about an hour or something. And during that time we were playing Kick-Off 2, it's like, yeah, we like it, but there's some things we'd like to change, and we'd like to do, maybe we should do a football game next again, you know, because we've done Micro Soccer a few years earlier. So we decided to do that, and whilst I was just waiting for the game to finish, I started to draw the little footballers using my Megalomania men, like just dressing them up. So they've been cavemen, they've been Normans, they've been Vikings. Now let's do the put them in football kits. So actually the very first football Sensible Soccer guys were running around Megalomania World. And what happened when we finished Megalomania, or towards the end, is Chris Chapman just turned the background into a football pitch. And we happened to find by fluke that the perspective, the little men, at that scale on the pitch worked really well for a football game to give you the vision to be able to pass and stuff. And then once we did that, then we got the look. So for Sensible Soccer it worked, and then when we did Cannon Fodder, you know, it was a natural thing to say, Stoo, can we use the little men again for Cannon Fodder? Same with Cannon Fodder 2, same with Sensible Golf, same with SWAS, so you end up with like 4 or 5 games. WizKid kind of fell out of that graphical world. Yeah.
Although I took the sprites from, I looked at the ones that were done that you did for soccer, and I think once we started playing around with what we wanted them to be, they end up changing from the actual ones that we use in soccer and Megalomania, because the sizes were slightly different. A lot of people think that they're the same kind of sprite. They're not. They're actually different sprites. But it's just like, and the other thing is like with the perspective you're looking at and the amount of detail you want to see on the screen, you haven't got the resolution to put too much detail in unless you go in close. So the only way to represent the play area is to zoom out. So you end up with these little characters at 11 pixels high. So that's, I mean, it's kind of almost like an accidental look that we came up with, isn't it? It wasn't a conscious decision to say, hey, let's be known for these little tiny little pixel characters. It's just that's what the game's demanded for the design.
When we started Cannon Fodder, interestingly, the in-house name for it for about a year was Lemmings with Weapons, and that's literally what we set out trying to do. So,
was there any sense in the company at the time that those 2 games in particular, Sensible Soccer, Cannon Fodder, were going to be huge? Did you know you had hits
only
on
Sensible Soccer? Sensible Soccer is the only game I've ever worked on in my life where after 2 months you knew it was going to be huge. It just, at that time, no one had done a football game that was that playable, and everyone in the office was playing it, and it worked, and we knew it would sell, and we knew it would be successful. It's the only one I've done. You know, it's just sometimes something comes together and it's like magic and it works. And in Sensible Soccer's case, that was definitely true.
And even I played it, you know, and I don't play football games. You know, and it's quite funny because you know, people ask me, oh, what team do you support? I don't really know. West Ham probably because of where I've come from. But it's so damn playable, you know, and if somebody like me, who's really not into football at all, plays it, it must say something about the quality of the game, you know. And I'm not blowing my own trumpet because I didn't work on it. I did the crowd, didn't I? That's what I did in the crowd. The little logo at the start.
And so Sensible Soccer, obviously, you revisited many times with sequels, new rosters, international versions, etc. Could you tell us some of the differences between them? Did you feel it was just, oh God, we've got to do another version?
No, I mean, you know, any football game, and I'm working on a new football game now called Sociable Soccer, which you guys might know about, which is just trying to do the same thing in a modern era. I'm delighted to say we've just signed a deal on this, so actually will be coming out properly around the world eventually. But yeah, I mean, football game is seasonal. You know, you just do it every year. That's what happens with football games. So yeah, the different versions we did, we launched it to coincide with the European Championships in '92 in June, and then there were several bugs and problems, so we did an update around about September, October that year. And then after that, we just pretty much put one out every year. Then '94 it became SWOS, so we made it bigger. But yeah, no, I mean, I think it was nice to have a game. In those days, you didn't have iterating on games. You just like put it in the box with no bugs. I mean, God knows where all these bugs just being in software to have to iterate. I don't know where this patching idea came from. Why not just fix all the bloody bugs before you put it out? It became a fashion, and I've got to say, a lot of the fashion for not so good coding came from the States. I think there was a different culture of making games there where you could do stuff and patch it. I think we had a lot of pressure. We're gonna manufacture 10,000 discs. They've got to be error free. We will refuse to let you go out there. So there wasn't decided that you can patch it later. We did notice some differences in approach to the way you deliver code in those early days. And it was really hard work for programmers in the 80s, 90s. You had to be a real perfectionist. If you weren't a perfectionist, you actually couldn't do the job at a professional level. You know, when I travel around the world to different people in different countries, I mean, there's a demo scene in lots of different countries. You know, there was a bit here, but we didn't really, from my perspective, I never was in the demo scene. I was just making games as a job from day one. You can't like make this bit work and ignore that bit. Everything had to be perfect, and I think that gave a different culture in doing stuff. I think I've deviated from your question about the football games, but basically it's nice to be able to correct things which are wrong with the game, but that's separate from fixing bugs, is my point, you know.
So moving on to Cannon Fodder then. Do you want to talk about the development of Cannon Fodder, the issue with the poppy and the British Legion and all of that, and war never being so much
the poppy
fun?
word.
Maybe Stoo can give his
And
perspective.
was that the first game where you used real music, so to speak?
Well, Cannon Fodder was the first game I hadn't done all the art, as I mentioned, so Stu was doing the art. So it made me really control the level design. I think in retrospect it ended up being, from my personal perspective, the best level design I've done in any game I've touched is Cannon Fodder. Because I had to do it, and because me and Stu ended up working very well together, it worked very well. It was kind of a nice, relatively easy to make game in that we went through it, we got the mechanics done. We focused first of all on this, like 4 guys together firing bullets in the line. Do you remember when we first did that?
Yeah, and we had them just walking around. I mean, I have to say, Jules, it was his first project on the Amiga. He'd never coded the Amiga before, and you know, the guy can code. You know, he just got these sprites moving about, and it was just amazing to see these little characters that I'd animated, and they weren't even really finished. You know. It was just that evolution, because we didn't even have like squads, did we? We didn't even separate them off at the start. It was just one little team of guys.
About 4 guys.
Yeah. And even the control system. That's another example of it evolved over time. You know, because you know, if anyone who's played Cannon Fodder, you can click, 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 and they'll follow the path. So you can preempt where you're going to go and go, right, okay, get them over there. And while I'm doing it, I'm going to concentrate on firing and killing those baddies over there. That came about from just continually playing the game in the office, you know. But yeah, I mean, it was a very strange thing for me, because when I was the first project I worked on there, and I was bricking it. I was really bricking it, because Jon probably doesn't know this, but I was panicking when I first started, because I thought, I don't know how I'm going to do these graphics, because they're like that size. What am I going to do? Because all the stuff I'd done before was like, you know, 32 pixels, 48 pixels, and I'm doing these little characters like 11, 12 pixels high. What am I going to do? You know,
But thankfully, you know, it evolved, and we did this. Do you remember that page of sprites I did with all the little colours, and we had like little uniforms?
Yeah, I do.
It's massive. I had this big page of sprites, and we picked out what we was going to have in it, and then they went into the game. So yeah.
You're making Cannon Fodder, again, it was a game which evolved. So the main evolution in Cannon Fodder was, once we got the mechanics for walking around, and then we knew we wanted like vehicles in there, so we wanted jeeps in there, we wanted skidoos in there, and helicopters and whatever. Then it was just, like I said, the level design was very, very deliberate. It was like, okay, so level one, we made it that every single level we introduced something new you've not seen before in the entire game. So it might be a new weapon, or a new type of enemy, or a new background, or a new sound effect, but there's always something you've not seen before in each level. So it's something that players are not conscious of, but it's like keeping their interest alive in the game. So there was that, and then we had the idea of the guys queuing up in their civilian clothes to go to war, which I quite like that. That's a particularly nice little symbology there. And then we had the this big empty hill with nothing on it, just a big green empty grass hill, and this little line of guys who remember what it used to look like before we populated or anything. And it's like, what can we do with that hill? And then we at the same time had, when we finished the mission, we had this and then we were going like this, and then we had all the guys going up the rank on their shoulder to get extra badges and being really good, you know. And then initially when we had that bit after the level, we just had the guys going up a rank, that was it. And then we said, okay, let's just I guess before that, we had a step. Let's name the soldiers, so you've got guys you can follow, like there's Stoo and Jops. We're two of them, Stoo and Jops here. But you had Jules and Chipper, and then you had stupid ones like Charlie and Chalky, and more stupid names going down to fill 500 slots.
I just say we was going to have a surname on them all first. Remember some of the names we came. You don't remember the Marjorie Wasp Fanny? That's the one. And I wish Marjorie had got in the game, but we was going to have two names, and I think that was like that was, and we dropped it. I think it was to do the amount of data we had to have. But yeah,
to make it shorter. Yeah, and then once we decided to name them. So then we ranked them up. It's like Fred's gone from like this rank to that rank, and then the decision was, let's just see if we put the names of the guys who died. Let's just pop up just to see. And then we all went, fuck, look at those dead guys. You know, I've been looking after Jules and Jops, and in the meantime, like 25 guys have died, and now I've called them Steve and Mark, and everyone's dying, and oh my God, I feel really bad. So how can we like play on this negative feeling? So the first thing we did was we made it so you couldn't click away from the list when your guys died. You're forced to feel guilty. Then the second thing was the music. So the music in Cannon Fodder, talking about the menu music first, we'd already started doing War's Never Been So Much Fun. This is like using what the Amiga could do sound-wise and the genius of Richard Joseph to make this happen. So I wrote this funny little reggae tune for War's Never Been So Much Fun, just a little lick, because we didn't have much time, we had to loop it around and sample it. And then Richard turned it into a great arrangement. But on the in-game music, I went back to a song I'd written when I was 18 about losing a girlfriend, basically, mournful teenage self-pity, and the tune, we just took the words out and it worked. Like for this, people dying in war, very sad. And then we looked at the hill, and we went, okay, what can we do at this hill? Should we fill it with flowers? Should we give them flowers with no dollar? What can we do? And then we're like, okay, we'll give them graves. It's obvious. Give them graves. So we populate the hill with the graves of every dead person who gets his own grave. And then, of course, the final touch, if you're a higher ranked soldier, you get a bigger grave. You know, so the guys at the top are getting mausoleums, and the little privates at the bottom are getting tiny iron crosses which fall apart a minute after you plant them in the ground. And that's how that evolved. And then the name Cannon Fodder came about, because it was about people dying. And then we went to the idea of using a poppy, because we were going to launch around poppy.
That's right. Yeah, that's right. And I think I might be to blame for the poppy, because I just used the one that you buy off all the Royal British Legion. I thought, well, I'll just put that on my monitor, take it to that, and draw it, put it in. Didn't think anything of it, as you don't, you know. And then, of course, you got that call, didn't you? And
well, Stoo drew his poppy very well, right?
Oh, yes.
So the poppy.
Actually, I drew 3 poppies, because I had to draw 3 of the buggers. So,
and then we got We must have done an advert or something because it was before the release. But Virgin, who were very, I mean, Sean Brennan, who's a marketing guy, Virgin was a genius marketer of games, and he latched onto this poppy to use it. We must have used it somewhere beforehand. And then we got a letter from the Royal British Legion that the Star stirred things up by saying these terrible video game makers are using a poppy, and it's a totally not respecting the war dead and the Chelsea pensioners and everything else. It's like, have you played our game? It's the only war game you've ever played which does respect the war dead, but they hadn't played it. And so Stoo unfortunately joined his poppy too accurately, and the Royal British Legion said, that's our copyright, that poppy. You can't use it and you owe us money. And we want a message at the start of your game to saying this game is in no way associated with us, which is why you get the message about the Royal British Legion at the start. So we took the poppy out. We had to pay them 500 quid. I always used to buy a poppy, like £1 every year. I paid, because I owned half the company, I paid for 250 poppies up front that day. And I've not bought one since, sadly. Much as I do respect the war dead and support what they do, that was out of order. So that was our first experience with legal stuff. No, it was our second. We had Captain Sensible's lawyer come after us for the first tune we used in Sensible Soccer that he told us he owned, but he didn't. That cost 10 grand.
So there was another move you made that could have caused controversy, thinking back to the time you did it, and that's putting Rude Hullet on the cover of
no,
Sensible World.
Rude Hullet is not on the cover of Sensible Soccer. There's a very faded image of a guy playing in an orange shirt with dreadlocks.
It looks like Rude Hullet.
Yeah. I would say that's racial profiling. No, we were skirting very close to the edge with that one. But yeah, I mean, those days you could put the names of footballers in, you know. These days, it's not quite so easy. It's very expensive to get these licenses to put in football games. But in those days, we got away with just names before people cottoned on to the fact that they could make a small fortune out of it. Really, we've been looking at it with our current football game. The costs are like horrendous. It's millions and millions and millions. What FIFA spends on licenses, no one would ever want to go there unless their game was generating £1 billion a year like they do, in which case I don't care.
So again, another question on the time we were in then and the time we're in now. The last time we met, you said if there was the money there to do sex and drugs and rock and roll again, you would do it. Do you think you could today? Tell us a bit about
sex, drugs, and rock
and roll.
With political correctness as it is, there's not a hope in hell we could get away with it these days. Sex, drugs and rock and roll was Leisure Suit Larry with balls, I guess. Would be the inspiration. So, adventure game, point-and-click adventure. Nothing that super different that people haven't seen. Point-and-click adventure. The differences were, the idea was that all the non-interactive objects were hand-drawn pen and paper, and all the 3D objects you could interact with were colour. So it was a bit like Paddington Bear, looking like a small cursor you'd put onto an interactive object, and you can choose to want to speak to it, or want to pick it up, or want to listen to it. You know, so context-sensitive stuff. Like we're talking, as a designer, the big hurt from Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll is we're talking about innovating this stuff 10, 15 years before Heavy Rain, for example. So what really hurts me with Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll is the innovation we didn't get out. And people think, oh, that's because the subject matter of the game was so contentious. But that's not the reason. It was actually the programming that was the problem.
It was, wasn't it?
Everyone in the office knew the problem was the programming, you know. Because you can change the content, it's easy enough. I would like to do it. I don't think the content as it is now would ever work, especially in the current environment. We're in an almost puritanical world at the moment where you've got to watch what you say to everybody. And again, there was a huge advantage with making games in the old days. No one cared, you know. You didn't have to worry about offending people too much. But these days, Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll would be difficult. And the sensibility in it is British humour, which means you can be really, really offensive with words, because that's where the humour comes from. So it would be stuff like, you wouldn't see people having sex necessarily if you'd have the sound effects, like a really nasty.
You know what was going on.
You'd know what was going on, or people would just say "fuck off, you cunt," you know, in the game because they want to say it, you know, without pulling punches at all, and that would be hard to do now because what we learned from Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll is that British humour does not translate very well around the world, because didn't we?
Totally. I mean, I've seen quite a lot of the game. You know, obviously the program. I'm not going to say who his name. The program was in the office that I was working in, and you know, it's a real shame because the amount of artwork that was done for that game was phenomenal, absolutely phenomenal. And there was two sections. You know, there was a 2D like was it Paddington Bear style artwork, which is really, it's just a really unique look to it. And then there's the 3D stuff. Unfortunately, I think the 3D stuff hasn't aged too well, which is what you were saying.
It's true,
you know? But the soundtrack, I mean, John hasn't mentioned the sound. I mean, the soundtrack's great. I mean, imagine a full rock opera. You know, it's. I mean, you gave me the CD years ago, and I listened to it, and I thought, wow. You know, it's just a shame that it never got to a stage where it was released to the world.
In terms of sound, I mean, me and Richard Joseph, you know, it's like you set a project up to do what you want to do. Richard just set himself up with the studio in Pinewood Studios, and we had a budget, a very big budget from Warner to make these games. And we could just sit in a proper professional studio, and like once a week I'd go there, and we'd write a tune, or we'd do some sound, or we'd do some speech. You know, we made a 52-minute CD, like a rock opera kind of style thing. But yeah, we wrote 32 different tracks for that game in the studio and recorded them. So sound-wise, it was really good. We've done quite a lot of speech, not all of it. The scripting was mostly done. It was like anyone who's worked on a project for 3 or 4 years and it goes in the bin, it hurts. And that was one of those for me. You know, I've worked on plenty of projects that have gone in the bin, but it's different when it's 3 or 4 years' work that goes in the bin at that high level. You know, with a big budget behind it, signed with a big company like Warner. And as Stoo says, I mean, at one time we had about 10 artists working on it.
Yeah, I mean, you had where offices in Saffron Walden, we had there was a wing that was attached to the office that went over the courtyard, and that became like the art centre for all the artists to reside. And there was about 10 guys just sitting there all day, just rendering graphics, creating graphics, and you know, a phenomenal amount of work went into that project. You know,
the real problem with that 3D era of sensible software was that we had been the champions. I say this hopefully without too much ego. We were the best Amiga developer probably in the world at that stage. You know, when you think about the games we'd done that you've listed out back to back to back to back, we were the last people in the world who wanted to move away from 2D games and the 16-bit systems, because we were getting everything you ever want. We were having a lot of fun, working hard, getting a lot of kudos and respect, winning awards, making money, you know, building something really good, and then you're forced to move. And when we did move, the problem we had was we were 2 years behind the curve. Like, people had been on 3D 2 years before us. People understood that you needed this layer of middle management we'd not even really thought about to move to manage the extra people you need. You needed special programmers that could do 3D. Your animation was entirely different, you know. There's so many lessons we just hadn't learned, and we were learning it in the spotlight because we're now quite a profile, and yet it's like I said, it's like this being forced to change an instrument at the wrong time. You know, we didn't really want to be forced to go from the piano to the bassoon next week, you know, but we had to because no one wanted piano music anymore, and so I think that yeah, it swings and roundabouts, you know. I mean. Different phases in your working life, things come up and things go down, you know, and at that point was a down, but the down was a huge amount of inexperience. At the same time was in that area, and actually having the biggest money we'd ever had given to us to make games at a time when we had the least idea of what to do with it. And yeah, we did get the art side right, but we got the programming side very wrong, and we got the management side very wrong. And in all honesty, we'd done 3 games. We signed 3 games because each game we got £1 million for, and we could have done 2 or 3, and we thought 3 million is bigger than 2. We hadn't had that much money up to that point, apart from the Sociable Soccer royalties. This was our chance to really cash in, and we were too greedy, actually. And that greed resulted ultimately in things going wrong, I think. In retrospect, what we should have done, there's a third game called Have a Nice Day, which most people won't talk about because it wasn't publicised that much, it never came out. And Stoo worked on that, was going on for a couple of years.
Yeah, I mean, I worked on that with Chris Yates, it was again what you were saying about the inexperience. I mean, Chris is a phenomenally great. I mean, he's just a brilliant programmer. I mean, the stuff he did on the 64 was and the Amiga was, you know, it was top of his game. But we got into it too late, and when we got one of the first PlayStation development kits for the first PSX, it was a great big old thing he had in his office. And he said to me, "Do you want to do this game? You know, have a nice day." And I said, "Okay, it's 3D." I went, "Right, okay." And I hadn't done any 3D, so for me it was like, well, okay, it's the new thing coming in. So I bought myself a PC for home. I had a copy of 3D Studio 4, which I'd installed on it, and spent a couple of weeks just getting my head around how to do these 3D graphics. Meanwhile, Chris was writing the code to get this rendering engine going on the PlayStation, and it looked like it was going to be going somewhere, but it didn't. The graphics were out of my comfort zone. I was producing level graphics and in-game graphics, but they weren't meeting the technical standards that we needed for the PlayStation to render. So I was doing stuff that was too big, you know, and Chris didn't know that it was too big, so he was trying to then take those down to get onto the PlayStation, and the game just wasn't really developing quick enough. I think if we'd have started it 6 months earlier, we might have had a chance of getting it out there to compete with all the other projects that were coming out at the same time, but we didn't, and unfortunately, you know, it just got canned. You know, we couldn't do anything with it.
It was a funny situation because in 1995 we had Sensible Soccer, SWOS going on, and we had Cannon Fodder going on, and Sensible Golf going on, and our two main publishers were Renegade, who were then bought by Warner, so it became Warner, and Virgin. And it was actually really good to have these two companies, and we were pretty much going between the two companies for a few years. And then when we got to 95, both companies said, "We want all of you." So everyone wanted Sensible Soccer, the next one, because it had been so successful. Me and Chris had always wanted to do Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, because this was a game that me and Chris designed even before we started Sensible Software. It was just like, it was much worse when it started. Big me, it got toned down by the time we got here. So, and then we had this idea for this Have a Nice Day, which actually the game's come out in the last year with a similar theme. We had this game idea called Office Chair Massacre, right? So you sit in an office chair with wheels, the type of wheels on the bottom with two arms, and you fire you've got guns, on the arms, and when you fire the gun, it pushes you backwards. You know, so you're going around an office and like shooting everyone and going backwards, and it was a parody on office politics. So basically, you went round trying to domineer the office, trying to make sure that you're going to get the promotion compared to the other guy. And all the guys who work for you are in red, and all the other guys are in yellow. And you go and terrorise the sales office into working for you, and then they work for you. It was a bit like that. It was a fun game. But what we should have done is actually stuck to our guns, said no Virgin, no Warner. We're not going to go 3 games or nothing with each of you. We're going to keep you split. We can do Sensible Soccer 98 with Warner, which is where Sensible Soccer was, and with Virgin we're going to do Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, because it would have been a great fit for that particular game. And we should not have done Have a Nice Day. Not because it was a bad game, because we didn't have the capacity to do it. And if you look back, the previous years to that, you started to see the problem we had. We'd been working a lot of years in hits without making money. Suddenly we were fashionable and we were cashing in, basically. So we did simultaneously 3D, SWOS, starting to work on Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll. We didn't have the capacity to do that many games properly. You know, Jules was trying to be lead programmer on 2 games simultaneously with Sensible Golf and Cannon Fodder 2 by using the same engine, believe it or not. And
even the file names for Sensible Golf are the same as ones using Cannon Fodder.
So I mean, Stoo was actually, Sensible Golf was a game which I kind of really took my eye off the ball with that entirely. And Stoo, you're actually more involved than I was, so maybe you.
Yeah, I mean, it was released, not finished. I mean, that's the bottom line. I mean, it needed some more work for it to be finished. I mean, some of the graphics weren't finished, and it got released with unfinished graphics. I don't know, is it the pressure from Virgin to get it out?
Virgin wanted it out, and this was because the Amiga was dying. Virgin had actually offered us a pretty good advance on it, and they needed to recoup that money, and they needed to get at the end of that 16-bit era, I get asked quite often by people, why did you stop working on the Amiga, or why did you, because commercially we couldn't sell it. It's like the point when you couldn't sell coal anymore. Well, we hit it with 16-bit machines in those mid-90s, and Virgin had hit it because they're buying, wasn't just our game, it had been other games. And suddenly the retailers are going, we don't want to stock Amiga anymore, or we're going to stop stocking it in December or whenever it was. So they were under pressure to get it into the market, and so then that comes back down to us. We're under pressure to, time-wise, get it out, because, as we said, everyone else had moved on to 3D at that time already.
Was that one of the driving forces behind you selling to Codemasters, the fact you didn't want to necessarily, as you said, learn new instruments, or had you had enough by that time?
It was not just that. It was also the, if we trace back what happened. So we're in 1997, right? We're still signed with Warner with this 3-game deal with Have a Nice Day, Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, and Sensible Soccer 98. It was a £3 million deal. We had over £2 million in advances. We'd given them nothing they could publish so far, because we're hopelessly technically behind on everything. And we were under a lot of stress because myself and Chris had personally guaranteed this whole thing 50-50. So if it fucked up, we'd have to pay all the money back personally. So this gave a lot of personal stress to us. So we're suddenly thinking with different heads, like how do we stop everything from collapsing and going right back and losing everything you've ever done from the start? So that became for us, I don't know how much you guys are aware of it, but this became our only driving thing we cared about in the end. How do we extract ourselves from this without everything falling apart? So there was a period of time in 97 where Warner refused to pay any more money for Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, but they equally refused to pull it from the deal. So we just sat there with 10 guys working on the game still, continuing to make it, knowing the chances are it's going to be killed, but we couldn't flinch first. We couldn't go to them and say, can we withdraw it from the deal, because then they'd ask us for the money back. So we had to just not move, and luckily the Sensible Soccer royalties were still so good, they were bankrolling the company for about 6 months. And then it got to a point where myself and Chris had to start putting money back in to keep it going. And so we went to have a meeting with the guys in Warner about after 6 months. And they said to us, look, we're really sorry, but with Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll and Have a Nice Day, both of which were struggling, we don't think this is going to work. We don't want to pay any more money. We're going to withdraw them from the agreement. We're like, okay, is that it? Yeah, okay. And then we left the office and we were celebrating because all the stress had gone, They had made the call to get rid of them, not us, which meant that we didn't have to give them money back. So then that made it better. And then with Sensible Soccer, we'd agreed, instead of doing one release, to split it into 3, to spread it out over time. And again, it came out after the first release. They said, no, we don't really want it, the other 2. And again, they released us. So we've got released twice by just being there patiently, fulfilling the contract, and waiting to see what they chose to do. But the reason when we got Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll removed from the contract, our first move was to try and resell it. So we were in 1997, 98 now. We went to 20 different companies. This is pre-GTA being launched, the big GTA. So no one had done a game so offensive as this before. And we couldn't get a single company to take the game up. It was a combination of the programming not being there and the content, in this case, we tried to resell. Virgin offered to buy it for us, but in the UK only. The money they could pay wasn't enough, that we wouldn't still be losing more money, so we couldn't do that, unfortunately. So we'd gone through that process. Myself and Chris had bankrolled it. Then we looked at, if we were going to do this properly to the next stage, we started off as a 2-man company in a bedroom with Flintstones wallpaper, wanting to be in a band. Then we worked with Martin, then Stoo joined, and Chris Chapman joined, and Jules joined, and Dave Corn joined. And that team, when there were 6 of us in March, when we started doing Sensible Soccer and that was the golden time, 6 of us. That was the band we wanted, And then when we went to Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll and these 3D titles, now we went up to 22 in the end, in that office that Stu was mentioning. And this was already bigger than we wanted. It was already like an orchestra rather than the band. And then we calculated the next phase to really move to modern development in '98, and we'd need to go up to 80 people. We sat down with our accountants and went through it. It's 80 people. It's like, we don't want to do this. We never set out to be a big corporation building a big company. We just wanted to make good stuff, and actually what happened to us was what we wanted: make hit games, get royalties from them, make the next game, but not to grow a company to be a big corporation. So that's why we got out, because the next phase was go to 80 people. And to be honest, and you witnessed this, even for Chris is a very private person. He likes to keep himself to himself. Going from 6 people to 20 people was already too much for Chris.
Yeah, I mean, I worked with Chris on a few projects, some that were released, some that wasn't, and he was very private. I mean, I got on really well with him. But I could see a change in Chris when there was like all of a sudden this whole team of people. I didn't even know their first names. A lot of these guys, they were just brought in because we needed to get graphics out. So for Chris, I think it was getting a bit much for him. Really,
it was far too much.
It was too much.
So it was time to get rid of and the way we ran the company. Me and Chris have been mates since we were at school. We never argued once. It was just like, it's time to win. It's like a very amicable divorce with no kids. It's just like, this is it. We've hit the end. So let's just call it a day whilst it's still good. And that's what we did,
We've got a few minutes, only a couple of minutes. I'll take a couple of questions from the audience. If anyone's got one, you can stick your hand up. Anyone want to ask a question?
Hi. Very quickly, can I just apologise for killing you so many times in Cannon Fodder? I always felt bad when you first...
That's okay, as long as you killed him as well.
I still walk with a limp.
You always seem to go first. I don't know why. I don't know what it was.
I don't like you.
So I am very sorry. Where did the name Sensible come from in terms of the...
This is interesting. People have asked me a few times. I remember that I liked it because we had the word sensible and software both got 8 letters, and they both start with S and then with E. So the very first logo had a big S at the start and a big E at the end, and then Ensible and Oft-War written like in small letters to join the S and the E together. I think we were stoned when we made it up. And I don't rightly remember. It could have been something to do with Captain Sensible, but for me it was definitely the way those words worked. And then we liked the technology and art mix, so the very original Sensible Software logo, not the one that's famous, had like a very techno print on one of the words and a very arty kind of gothic-y print on the other one. But it was definitely invented in Chris's bedroom with the Flintstones wallpaper. That much I do remember.
When you were making your games, did you give any thought to preserving what you were doing, whether it be the art, the sound, the ideas, or the way you were doing it?
What do you mean by preserving?
Well, nowadays, I mean, you've got a few games there that you've never released. I mean, are they just lost? Are those assets lost, or is there any way somehow?
The thing is, there's some assets stuck on some floppy disk somewhere that, it ends up being like that. It's like if you trace back some of the stuff on Have a Nice Day and Sex, Drugs and Rock and Roll, it's probably sitting on the server disks we had in that office.
I'm quite anal about backing up data, mainly because like many years ago I lost a load of stuff and I thought, well, I'm never doing that again. So I've actually got quite a lot of the old graphics files from that time. I haven't got all of them, but I have got, like, for instance, Have a Nice Day. I've got most of the textures for that still. I've got some of the models for that. There's actually a screenshot I did for a game which was never even, which was Mirror Signal Manslaughter. And I've got the screenshot.
That's pre-GTA as well, and that was really...
That actually is GTA, effectively.
So sad.
Yeah, but I've got that. That was recovered. That was a lost disc that someone recovered for me. So that's there. But I have got a lot of the data from that time, and I am putting on my website. I'm actually starting to put some of the galleries up with some of that on, but not all of it, because something I'm not going to release because they might be used for something else at another time. But yeah, I mean, as for the code, I mean, what John said. I mean, imagine there's probably a machine somewhere sitting, maybe Codemasters.
It's just so hard to get this stuff together. But Mirror Signal Manslaughter, very quickly, the inspiration is this: you're driving along the road, you come to a zebra crossing, an old lady's at the zebra crossing, you wave her over, then you put your foot down. That was the initial idea for the game.
I wish we'd done it because I had such fun doing the screenshot. I mean, I did a screenshot in the Amiga 64 extra half bright mode just because it was a mock-up, and I thought this is going to be fantastic. You know, just taking the kind of mow everybody down. But you know, alas, nobody was interested in it at the time.
Armageddon, to be fair, did a pretty good job of that.
Yeah.
Later on, yeah.
Any others? Take a couple more maybe before we have to finish. Anyone? Yeah.
You come and meet me halfway.
So I think around, was it about 2004, Codemasters released their own version of Sensible Soccer. How do you feel about seeing your old babies being pimped out like that?
Oh, on which platform? Which one?
It was on the Xbox, I think.
Oh, was that the Xbox 360?
No, on the original Xbox.
That particular one. So, in a lot of these releases, I've kind of been involved. So in 2006, there was an upgrade gun, and I was directly involved with the design of the 2006 as a consultant with Codemasters. 2004, was that the one that was based on the Amiga but running on an Xbox? Was it?
Sort of, I mean.
Is that the one that which didn't have that great online play in it? Or was it before
I
that?
never tried it online.
Oh, right, okay. I mean, it's kind of... What really bothered me was the cannon fodder that was done by those Russian guys at Cannon Fodder 3. That was
Bloody awful.
That was really awful. I think that I've been involved in something like, we did a pretty good mobile phone version in 2005, I think it was, which was quite good. There's nothing you can do about it. You've got to let go of it. This is why in our new football game, I want to call it Sociable Soccer and it to not be Sensible Soccer anymore because it's new. The thing with retro stuff is, it's great for people who love retro games, but people are very critical of them because it can easily break people's vision. And commercially, retro releases aren't as good as a new game. If you launch something as if it's an old game, like we released Speedball in 2011 in my company Tower Studios, we got a 6-month peak and then nothing. Because that's what happens with retro stuff. Everyone goes, "Oh, that was nice," and it's like a memory lane trip, and then it's gone. Whereas when you were launching something new, you've got to do something new. So with Sensible Soccer, I have to let it go. We had to let it go in '99 when we sold it to Codemasters, and I've learnt to live with it now. What bothers me more is, firstly, when I moved to Codemasters in '99, I was commissioned to design a Cannon Fodder 3, which I worked on and off for 2 or 3 years, and Codemasters never consistently gave us the programming staff to finish it. And it was a great game. I was working in a team in Fulham, a studio they had there, with about 30 guys, with the producer that we were getting on with really well, me and him together running this team. And we finished off Prince Nassim boxing in this studio. And then the next game to go there would be this Cannon Fodder 3D as we called it then. And we were going really, really well, and unfortunately Codemasters needed the money and sold the building, because I owned the building, the whole studio disappeared, and with it went Cannon Fodder 3, and that's sometimes those kind of things happen, you know, but you have to learn to let go. I've learned to let go now.
Yeah, and at that point we're going to have to end, I'm afraid. We've got to let our guests get out of here and drive all the way up to sunny Hull, so please join me in thanking our guests from Sensible Software, Jon Hare and Stoo Cambridge.